welcome back. Thanks for stopping by. I'm guessing most of you have been to my channel before, but if not, my name is Katie, and I'm an adoptive mom to 3 kids ages 4 through 12 who we adopted from foster care. And I'm here to guide you through your adoption journey. In addition to my many informational videos about adoption and foster care, I also now offer adoption consultation calls. This gives us an opportunity to talk face-to-face over Skype, where I can answer any of your specific questions to your specific situation. So if I don't cover everything you need here and you want to talk more through your personal experiences and how that can affect your adoption, you'll definitely want to book a consultation call with me, which you can check out in the description box below for a link for that, as well as in my pinned comment. I've been blown away so far by the support, and I've been loving talking to different families each week about their adoption journey and where they're going. So without further ado, let's actually get into the questions you guys asked so that we can get you the answers you need. Let's start off with an easy one. I don't really have to think about this one. The first question is, what's your dog's name? I love that. I love how random it is. I also love my dog, so I'm happy to talk about her. She's currently just like cuddling with a pillow over here in the background. She always doesn't like when I stand here because she wants to stand right next to me. She thinks I'm staring out the window. So my dog's name is Suki. If you've ever watched Gilmore Girls, yes, she is named after the character Suki St. James, who is one of my favorite kind of quirky characters from Gilmore Girls. It's funny because now I don't even associate that name with Gilmore Girls. I just only think of my dog when I hear it. So when I've gone back and watched Gilmore Girls and they're like, oh, Suki, I'm like, that's weird because that's my dog's name. But yes, that is where she got her name and what her name is. Thank you for asking. Natalie asked me a question about whether or not I felt imposter syndrome when I first kind of went through the adoption process of bringing my kids home, and I think I understand what she means. She kind of apologized for asking it. It does not sound negative at all, Natalie. I totally understand what you're trying to ask, and yes, I did experience that. I don't think I would have called it imposter syndrome. Like, I don't think I would have thought to put that name to it, but I definitely had a feeling of inadequacy and like I wasn't living up to my own expectations of the type of parent I thought I would be, and also not living up to my expectations of how quick bonding would happen with my children. And this happened with both of our adoptions. It kind of like started over during our second adoption. Thankfully, within the second adoption, I had so much more support. And the next part of her question was asking kind of, how do you work through this feeling of imposter syndrome? So the number one biggest thing that has helped me is going to therapy. And I know like not everyone maybe can afford therapy, or maybe not everyone is super comfortable with the idea of therapy, but I promise it is worth it. It was extremely helpful for me. I only did it the second adoption. I hadn't done it the first, and I wish I had. I think that would have been such a game changer for me. And I don't think it would have taken me as long to work through kind of those difficult feelings if I had gone to therapy during that time. The other thing that really helped me was talking to friends and family that I really trusted about the feelings I was having and trying to be open and honest with them. And again, with our first adoption, I did not open up to people very much within the first 6 months of our adoption when I was really struggling. I think I felt like a failure, and I worried people would judge me because why wasn't this just so easy? I had the cutest daughter, and it was just like, from the outside looking in, it was perfect. It was like picture perfect and adorable and sweet. But on the inside, we were facing a lot of turmoil. Like, our daughter was only 1.5, but she had a lot of trauma from the separation from her foster family, moving with us. You know, it was just a hard time, and I struggled with it, and she struggled, and it was rough. So I really regret not opening up to people sooner, because once I did, it was like the floodgates were open and I felt so much better. Also, talking to other adopted moms who feel the same things you feel is so helpful. Like, I really thought my other adopted mom friends were just like doing great and they were so much better than me at this. And then I talked to them and I'm like, oh my gosh, we all feel the same way. Like, it's so validating to have that experience. All right, someone else asked a question about what is the best way to introduce your family to your adopted child. I really like this question because I think a lot of times I see people do this in a way that I do not think is a great idea. Before we adopted, I was like, that's so cute. Like, so basically what people will do, especially with international adoption, I find, is that they'll bring the kid home and they'll get off the airplane and they'll have this whole group of their family and friends waiting, holding signs and cheering for them and whatever. And I just like, when I used to watch those sappy adoption videos before we adopted, I was like, that is so sweet. That's so cute. And now that I've been on the other side of it, I'm like, oh, that is not a good idea. That is way too overwhelming for that child. That is way too much pressure on them to be happy about what is going on. So here's my small advice to this. Do it slowly. Do not have too many people at the house at a time. I think a certain level of cocooning is a good thing. Cocooning is when you kind of shut off the outside world. You're in your little family cocoon where it's you and the child and your spouse or whoever. And I think that is helpful. I did not do cocooning to the extreme that some people do, but we did try to kind of slowly introduce people in smaller groups as much as we could. And I do think that tends to work the best. I could go into a lot more detail about that, but I think I'm going to save that for a feature-length film, like a full-length video, because I could share a lot of tips for that, and I think that would be a good one. So thank you for that video idea. Okay, I had a couple people ask about adopting out of the state or even just out of your county and kind of how I decided to do it and how it worked. So we did not adopt outside of our state, but we could have. Actually, one of the first potential matches we got was a little boy in Texas, and as you know or don't know, I live in Ohio, so that's pretty far. But our agency did have connections with other states, and so we would have been able to adopt from another state if we found the right match. So that was always on the table, and I have friends who have done so, but we ended up adopting all of our kids from Ohio. Now, to go on to the county question, they are from different counties. So for our kids, we have the opportunity to be matched, like I said, with any kid from Ohio or from any other state. So that includes other counties as well. I think in most cases, I don't want to say this for certain because states are so different in the way they do things, but I think in many cases, your agency should be able to place you with kids from any county in your state at the very least. Oftentimes, they can also place you with children in other states as well, but you want to make sure you ask those questions before you sign on with doing your home study with that agency. Okay, the next question was about books I recommend for adoptive parents. And I actually have two that are my top favorite adoption books. So my first one that I always recommend, you may have heard me recommend it before, is called The Connected Child. And this is often referred to as like the Bible of adoptive parenting because it has so many great tips, a lot of really practical things you can do. And if you've ever heard of TBRI, which is like trauma-based relationship parenting, then that is what this is kind of, it follows that line of thought there. This book is really great. It has tons of practical things in it, situations and how you can respond, and like scripted things you could say in different situations, which I really find helpful. I read this book the first time before we ever started the adoption process, and I'm glad I did because I think it gives a pretty good look into some of the situations you could come in contact with when you're actually like on the ground being an adoptive parent, like in the thick of it. But I got to kind of see what that would look like before I actually was there. And so it gave me time to like mentally process that and see, is this something I think I could handle? And of course I thought, yeah, I could handle it. And then when you're actually in it, you're like, oh my gosh, can I handle this? But at least you have that resource at your fingertips if you need it. I'll be the first to admit I do not use everything from that book, and I'm kind of rereading it to refresh myself every now and then. So definitely is a good one to own and buy. So I'm going to put a link down below in the description box so that you can buy it if you want. I highly recommend buying your own copy so you can mark it up, you can reread it and reference it when needed. The other book that I don't hear about as often, but personally I thought it was one of the best ones I read, because I read some duds, I'll be honest. This one is called Telling the Truth to Your Adopted or Foster Child, and this book is really good. So not only does it share things about why it is so important to be open and honest with your child about the circumstances regarding how they were placed for adoption and all of those things, it also gives you like exactly how to talk to kids at different ages about different types of situations. And some of these situations are very intense things. You know, you can think about all the different ways, all the different things that could cause a child to be placed in an adoptive placement. and they have a script basically for every single situation I can imagine at like different ages. So how to explain that to a teenager, how to explain that to a 2-year-old, how to start having those conversations so that the kid can know their own story. And I think that's extremely important to do. So again, I'm gonna link this one below. This is another one that I looked at again and again. I highlighted, I underlined things. So I highly recommend purchasing your own copy. And I don't know, I find it hard to find stuff like this at the library anyway. So sometimes it's just worth buying it. Someone asked if there was a minimum salary requirement to adopt from foster care. This one's a little hard to answer because different states are very different, and even different agencies sometimes have different requirements. Here's the big thing I'll say. You need to make sure that you have enough money, that you know you could support the child, that you could provide for them, provide shelter, provide food, and that they can have a somewhat comfortable life. This does not mean you have to have so much money that you're taking them on all these crazy trips and you buying them the best of the best. It's not like that at all. But you want to make sure that you can comfortably provide for the child. When you do the home study process and the application stuff, they will ask you a lot of personal financial details, and so that will tell them whether or not you are able to do that. So I recommend talking to someone at the agency before you get started, explaining your financial situation. This person mentioned they're going to be a teacher, and I know teachers don't make like the most money, but oftentimes it's a somewhat livable wage. And so I think you might be okay unless you have tons and tons of debt, but that's definitely something I would ask before committing to working with a specific agency. Stephanie asked about adopting kids out of birth order. So that is what we did. Our youngest child was the one we adopted first. And so we ended up adopting older kids later down the road, which obviously is a little bit different than what a lot of people do. So that definitely was challenging. Our daughter picked up some of their bad habits because, as you know, like 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds are extremely impressionable. And so if they see the older sibling doing that, they're going to do it too. And so that was probably one of the most challenging aspects. But in other ways, I think it was better for us because our youngest really struggled if we ever like held a friend's baby or if we gave attention to a younger kid or a kid her age. But with older kids, she was always fine because she viewed older kids as people that she could get attention from as well and that she could play with and have little playmates. But younger children were like a threat to her somehow. And so I really don't think she would have handled it well having a younger child come in. So having older kids actually worked out for the best for us. But I actually will probably make a full video about that as well. That's been on my list for quite a while. And so I think I'm not going to go into any more detail there because I will make another feature-length film of that one. Someone else who's interested in adopting from Michigan asked that basically their agency is kind of pressuring them low-key to get a foster care license instead of just an adoptive license, telling them it's going to be faster if they do it that way. Here's my advice with that. Our license is a dual license, so we have foster care and adoption. I think it's good to have both with like legal risk placements, which I'll talk about in another video coming up here. But with legal risk placements, I think it is better to have that foster license. I don't know if you could do it if you did not, but I definitely think it's good to have. Now, if you feel like the agency's pressuring you to just do foster care, then you might want to have a talk with them and say, hey, we really want to do waiting child adoptions. We're fine to do the foster care license if you think it would be beneficial, but just so you know, this is what we want to do. I just think it's good to be honest with them and to be honest with yourself about what you're okay with. Sky asked a good question about the matching process of being matched with your child. And she was wondering if basically during the adoption, like licensure process where you're taking the classes and doing the home study, do they start looking for potential matches for you then, or is that only after you're actually licensed? In every situation I have ever heard of, they do not start looking for matches for you until after you are licensed. So you have to realize caseworkers are very overworked and underpaid, so they're not going to be sitting around like trying to find matches for people that they're not even sure will actually be licensed. I'm sure you'll get your license and everything, but I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm just letting you know that it wouldn't really make sense for them to do that. Nothing is stopping you from looking at photo listings and, maybe writing down some potential names or cases of kids that you are interested in having your home study submitted to. but I do not think you'd be able to actually submit it until later. And because of that, the chances of you being matched with that specific child would be pretty low. But hey, I don't blame you if you're just like curious and want to start looking at those photo listings yourself. Okay, so there are a few more questions, but I think I'm gonna stop there for now because I don't want this to be too long, and I also want to be able to answer the questions in detail, in the detail that they deserve. So if I did not get to your question yet, please just be patient. It'll be coming out next week. I'll do the second part of this video where I will answer all the other questions. And you know what? You might have time to ask a couple more. We'll see. So if you have another question, go ahead and put it in the comments just in case, because I might be able to get to it. And if not, maybe you will give me another video idea like some of these people did. Definitely in the comments below, write any other questions you have or anything you'd like me to include in upcoming videos. I love to get your feedback so that I can make things that are actually helpful for you. So definitely subscribe if you want to catch the next video if you have not yet. I'd love to hang out with you more and get to know you more, so that's a great way we can do that. And for those of you who have been kind of on the fence about booking a consultation call, I definitely recommend that you book soon, because starting mid-August, my availability is going to go down quite significantly, and I want to make sure that I can get you in before that time. I also very likely will be taking off a little bit of time in the early fall, late summer, so if you want to talk to me sooner rather than later, this would be a great time to book your consultation. I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but I recently added a new consultation package that's like a much simpler one. So if you're looking for more of like a general Q&A session, but you're still just kind of getting started, this could be a great option for you, and it's less expensive than my more like premium package. So if you would like to do that, schedule a consultation with me and I'd be happy to help you. Thank you again so much for stopping by. It was great to hang out with you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.